Okay guys, welcome back, and in this lesson we will discuss creating some export presets. We have our export media tab open. Okay, up here we have our format options. If we were going to DVD, we'd click this. If we were going to Blu-ray, we would click this. So for example, let's click DVD. Then we can set it to NTSC wide, wide progressive, and so on. And then in this case, we'd have a little bit of black bars. So what we'd do is we'd go to stretch to fill or scale to fill, whichever you prefer. Blu-ray, we can work with the same idea. We have a whole bunch of different presets. If we're going to the internet, then we would select H.264, and then we will create a whole bunch of different presets that show up here. So right now, we're working with an HD timeline with HD footage at 23,976 frames per second. And so we need to create a 1080p preset. Okay, so let's get started. So we have right now width 1920 by 1080. So that's perfectly fine. 23,976. Progressive aspect ratio is 1.0, which is fine. TV standard NTSC, that's great. Level 4.1, okay. Render at maximum depth, we want to check that. You'll notice that now it's changed to custom because we've changed something. We want our bitrate encoding to be 2-pass. This will take longer, but it creates a much higher quality export. Okay, the next thing we want to do is select use maximum render quality. If we're working with HD footage 1920 by 1080, I would normally keep this at around 26. And this one can be 26, 27, or 28. I normally just keep it, 2 above. So the target bit rate is 26 megabits per second, and the maximum is 28. Okay, let's go to audio. Audio format is AAC, that is fine. At 48, we want to export as stereo. Audio quality high, and kilobits per second is 320, that's great. Okay, so that's all the settings we want to change. So let's go up to the preset. We'll click this button right here. We'll create a new preset. We'll call it 1080p 23.976 and at 26 megabits per second. We'll click that. It has now created a preset. You can already see that I've created one very similar to that. If we were exporting to 720p, for example, we can use this as a starting point. Then we can uncheck this here. We can change this to 1280 by 720. And because it's a smaller resolution, our bitrate doesn't need to be as high. So we can set this to something like, 16 or 18. And then we'll just do this a little bit higher. So 18 and 20. Everything else stays the same. We can go to save preset. We'll just change the very beginning to 720. And then we'll change this number to 18. Press OK. Now we have a 720 preset and a 1080p preset that we created. Using the 1080p as a guide again, we'll create a 4K preset. In order to create a 4K preset, we will change the height to 2160. We will change the width to 3840. That automatically changed the level to 5.1, which is great. That's what we need. We can't have this high of a resolution with a lower level. Bitrate encoding, still always 2-pass. Target bitrate. Now this we need to make a little higher, so I normally do around 35, which means 37. And we'll save that as either 2160p or 4K HD. And then megabits per second is 35. We'll go to OK. Now we have a 4K, 720, and 1080. So now we want to create a standard definition one. To do that, we will keep our 1080p as a starting point. We will uncheck this. We will create the height as 480. We will make the width 852. And then we will stretch to fill. and that just cleans up the one layer of pixels at the bottom. Okay, so it's important to understand that the reason why it's 852 by 480 is because we're working with widescreen footage that has a 16 by 9 ratio. If we were working with 4:3 footage, then we can actually work with this being 720 instead. But if we use 720, then the image gets stretched a little bit. So let's go back to 852. And if we go to source, if we compare the source to the output, you'll see that it's slightly different. But that's okay because we are converting high definition footage to standard definition widescreen. So it's okay to have a little bit of a loss. We do not need such a high bit rate. We can set a max of, let's say, like 8 or 10. Okay. And then we will save a preset as 480. And we'll set that to 8. And then we'll just make a note this is widescreen. Okay, so now that we've created all the presets that we need, let's go back to the original preset of 1080p because we're working with a 1080p timeline. We have all the settings set up. Audio is good, video is good. We're exporting both video and audio. Okay, then we need to name our clip, so we can click here. Let's create a new folder called Finals. You can call this whatever you want. Okay, we'll call it Fall 2015. Click Save, and then we can hit Export. It's rendering the required audio files, and then it begins encoding our entire edit. Because it's HD, it will take a few minutes to export, but once it's done, then you'll have a desktop version that you can upload directly to YouTube or Vimeo, and the quality will look great.